Here on The Colour of Country Life, we really appreciate catching up with Eng Tan. He's from S&P, an analyst there, and we're talking about the Chinese economy. Eng, how are you today?
Great.
Good to be catching up with you. We know you've kept a close eye on what's happening with the Chinese economy. Just first of all, explain to us what we're seeing right now with China and the change in its direction with the economy.
Well, in the past, the government of China has always been very conscious to keep economic growth, at a reasonably high level. What has changed this year is that despite the great pressures we have seen on the economy, the government has not actually come out with very big or very stimulative measures in order to bring growth back up to a very high or more usual level for China. What we have seen, on the other hand, is relatively smaller measures that seek to prevent confidence from slipping too much, but on the whole, not trying to push the economic growth this year back to a very high level.
From memory, the Chinese economic growth rate has, I guess, in recent times been well ahead of what we've seen in Western countries. But what do you describe as sort of a lower growth rate than what we've seen in the past?
Okay, this year I think most people are expecting the Chinese economy to grow about 3%. Now, in the past, it had been in double digits for a long time, but in recent years it has been more between 5 to 6%. And even then, some people are considering that below the Chinese potential. So 3% this year would be a very low growth indeed for China.
Sure would. When it comes to, I think the commentary I saw from S&P, you were describing these as potentially structural changes in their economy. What might be some of these structural changes? Is it just about consumer confidence?
No. Actually, I think these structural changes, which I think they are pursuing, are part of the reason why growth is lower this year. What they are trying to do is basically to change the economy such that it rests on more sustainable and less destabilizing sources of growth. Up to now, growth in China has been associated with excess leverage and a reliance on the real estate. Now, the sometimes painful measures that they're implementing today seek to reduce the risk associated with these two drivers of growth and try to put the economy on sources of growth that are more sustainable and, in particular, consumer demand, as you mentioned earlier.
I noticed that there are there's an electoral cycle of sorts happening in China at the moment. Does that play into why these changes are being made in the economy at this time, or not really connected as far as you can see from where you sit?
I think at a deeper level it is, because this government seeks to extend its administration into a third term, which is unusual for China, and therefore there has to be some reasons why they want to convince people to allow them this extra term, right? So I think one of the key success they would like to rest this on is their achievement in pushing painful reforms that previous governments had been unable to do. But of course, in a normal situation, you would expect that governments would try to keep growth high and therefore not be doing whatever they are doing today. But in the case of China, I think there are some specificities to the political structure there.
While I've got you just on this topic with China, they have pursued, as far as we've understood from where we sit further away, this business of COVID zero, trying to suppress COVID-19 in the country. Have you been able to sort of read what sort of economic impact that's been having in China, and is that still what they seem to be pursuing there?
Well, I think the economic impact is very clear. It is very negative. And it not only depresses activities today, but also prevents people from investing, because there's a great deal of uncertainty about where this policy is heading next, because the government has not yet come up with an exit strategy. But I think they have decided to do this for many political reasons, partly because I think they are not sure that the population is ready to want to open up, because quite a number of people who are not yet severely affected by some of these measures continue to believe that this is one policy that has kept a lot of them safe from the disease, which they perceive as relatively deadly.
Now, Eng, you're based in Singapore. As you can imagine, here in Australia, we're very interested in what's happening with the Chinese economy, because it is a big player for us in terms of our commodity exports. On the global economy stage, you're willing to sort of indicate what this might mean? There's concern already that there's going to be a recession in broad parts of the world. A slowdown in the Chinese economy certainly couldn't help.
Yeah, certainly. But at the same time, we also have an inflation problem. Now, we may not get much in terms of growth. But at this point in time, in many economies, especially the advanced economies, the labor markets are very tight. Prices are high, and wage expectations are rising. So while it is never a good thing to have a global recession, the fact is it also helps to bring some of these prices or price pressures down, and hopefully it will not damage the labor markets too much.
Well, Kim Eng Tan from Singapore, from S&P analyst there. Thank you so much for filling us in. Sometimes we have views or opinions what's happening in China, but better to talk to someone much closer to the action. Thanks for joining us today on Flow.
Thank you.